Hello, ladies and gentlemen, ICSS conference participants, professors, lecturers, and students. Welcome to my contribution to this ICSS conference. My name is Roland Csizmazia. It's really an honor to be able to participate at your well-organized conference. Many thanks to the Eurasia Research team for the wonderful organization, and also the organizers of the 9th International Conference on Social Science and Humanities in London, also through Zoom, of course. This is a great opportunity given to us to share our research findings, ideas, motivations, just like mine, hopefully. So let's start with the actual presentation, and let's take the first slide of the overview. It's about the introduction first, obviously, to the topic, and then I continue with trading in emission certificates and carbon offsets, because this topic actually is not 100% related to the topic itself that I have, but it's one of the reasons why I feel that this case study has to be developed. And then I continue with the next topic: reasons for nuclear power phase out in Germany, and then changing structure of power generation source. And then this is actually based on statistics, and I also will move to the next question based on these statistics, based on the data, if it is right or wrong to quit nuclear power generation by the German policymakers, and then estimating the cost of nuclear power generation might fail, and that is one of the reasons I believe that it might be a wrong idea to completely quit nuclear power generation. What we know is that our activities influence the climate, and we know that also the climate change largely is influenced largely by electric power generation, and it accounts for 25% of greenhouse gas emissions, shown also by the US data in 2020. And then from that data we can also extract the following: that 73.2% of the greenhouse gas emissions could be attributed to the energy and related industries, so heat and transport and energy use in industries, as of 2016. And this data was generated, as I said, in 2020. Obviously, most of the industrial countries would demonstrate similar parts or similar proportions of greenhouse gas emissions and by sector. We know that Germany has long been perceived as a global role model for successful energy transition, and in 2000, accordingly, also Germany introduced the motion or also the policy energy turnaround, Energiewende, with clear goals. That is, for example, to phase out, to quit the nuclear power generation by 2022, and also to stop using the coal, let it be black coal or lignite, before 2038. Significant progress in the transition to less carbon intensive and yet still secure and affordable energy supply should have been achieved as planned by the government by 2020, but we will see that we are relatively far from it. Let's also look at the ambitious goals without progress. We can see that the largest industry countries, along with the companies, are actually ready to cut their emissions, and the commitment is actually huge, but unfortunately we don't see how they would do that. Instead, what we can see is that from the Kyoto Agreement, where we had this mandatory offsetting schemes, now we introduced a voluntary offsetting scheme system. Additionally, that was of course with a good idea behind, unfortunately could be misused, because mandatory offsets are clearly defined, but voluntary offsets are not clearly defined. So what are these actually? Now we can see these like reforestation. Anyway, so why would the company actually want to reduce their carbon footprints? We can see that as a Center for Climate and Energy Solutions explains, for many companies, reducing greenhouse gas emissions benefits the bottom line because efficient practices reduce operating costs and help increase employee productivity. Now, in fact, if we just consider the USA, the majority of the US workers would be more satisfied in a job where they can make a social or environmental impact on the world. I also see this, but additionally we can say that there is a PR action that goes on, and this helps companies in reaching their targeted sales and also to build a strong brand image. So despite not just this mandatory, then voluntary offsetting and also voluntary participation we see, but in the case of car manufacturers have had to commit or have to make some commitments to the European Union if they want to sell their cars there, because the average carbon dioxide emissions from new cars should not have exceeded 130 grams per kilometer by 2015, and now in 2020 this emission must have been decreased by 2020 to 95 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer. That means that the engine size has also been reduced, or at least made more efficient, and the fuel consumption should not be more than like 5.6 or around 5 liter by now. So carbon dioxide emissions should be decreased. Also, carbon offset schemes allow companies to invest in environmental projects around the world to balance out their carbon footprints. in that way, we differentiate between carbon neutral, carbon negative, and zero carbon. Now, zero carbon is a term commonly applied to buildings and modes of transportation that are carbon neutral. Carbon negative means that the company actually emits less than it turns into oxygen. So in that way, the carbon negative company removes more carbon from the atmosphere than it releases. Like we could say also Shell or Exxon. These companies obviously may not be carbon negative at all, even if we consider them according to the definition as carbon negative. Now here it comes to the major problem. This kind of work we can call as greenwashing, and it exists since 1960s. It is actually marketing practice that leads customers to believe that the company's products are more eco-friendly than they actually are when companies display words like conscious, sustainable, and ethical on their ads or commercials or paper on packaging. Now, so the problem is, instead of decreasing or finding the way improve the productivity in that way that they try to find technologies reducing emissions, companies can easily buy their share of credit or offset credit in exchange some money. So sometimes it is as cheap as $4 or $5 per ton of carbon dioxide emission. Well, let's see more again, and here we can see how Germany actually missed the targets, missed the goals that was announced till 2020. Not all the goals were missed, of course, but let's see one by one. Now, electricity generated from renewables could be reached, and actually not just reached, but now the share of renewable sources is larger than expected, so it's about 45-67% as of 2021. The CO2, so the carbon dioxide emission, couldn't really sufficiently decrease. The target was 40% reduction compared with 1990s level, and that is not the case. It couldn't be reached. Even more, it became perhaps a little bit higher. But not to compare in 1990s, what you see here with some other data, so 2013, for example. Primary energy consumption couldn't be reached and accomplished, and the electricity consumption, I can see that although this target couldn't be accomplished by 2020, but it was accomplished in 2021. So we see a kind of time shift in the targets or target reaching or goal reaching, but we also see another problem that is described by the McKinsey's article. That is that Germany has had a highly secure electricity supply for the decades, but then again this has been impacted. The German power grid repeatedly faced critical situations in June 2019, and since that time we have these situations, especially after the war. So after the war started, now significant shortfalls in available power were detected on 3 separate days, and the supply situation will become even more challenging in the future. We also see that the phase out of nuclear power until the end of 2022. Now we know that it might be a plan to continue generating electricity by nuclear power sources, and a planned reduction of coal-fired generation will gradually shut down for the secured capacity. Now the point is that even though Germany actually wanted to phase out nuclear power plants, it might say at the end that they continue the operation for a certain time. Now, yes, we started to trade with our air that we breathe in. Well, we see here that the emissions trading system could not come up to all the regulations and all the expectations we had, but as soon as weakness was realized or observed, that weakness was eliminated from the system. Let's see how it will be developed so that we can see at the end a success. Kems et al. 2016 claimed that 85% of the projects have a low likelihood that emission reduction are additional and are not overestimated. And we also see one more problem here, that at least 52% of the approved carbon offsets were allocated to projects that would very likely have been built anyway. So here is it, right? And then now we see that also that the European Union doesn't recognize afforestation and reforestation as mandatory offsets, because there is no guarantee that the forest lasts long, and forest fires can happen all the time, causing again more carbon dioxide emission than actually sucking in carbon dioxide or diminishing carbon dioxide. So we see a few reasons also for nuclear power phase out. The Fukushima catastrophe was the trigger, but also we know that the age of the nuclear power plants in Germany, so generation 1 and 2 power plants, are among the main reasons. So then the disposal question of high-level radioactive waste has remained unsolved worldwide, and additionally the safekeeping of a highly dangerous remaining construction. So after using or after utilizing these reactors and the life cycle time is over, the safekeeping of these buildings, of these plants is really highly dangerous and also costs a lot of money, as described by the German government. Now, cost of electricity generation is seen as highest in Germany due to the disposal of safekeeping after the life cycle time. We also see a changing structure, and let's now come to the statistics. So this changing structure of power generation sources, and here we have the carbon dioxide issue again. We see that although nuclear power plants do not have a high GHG, so greenhouse gas emission, so 32 gram per kilowatt hour. Compared to that, we can see the multicrystalline solar and the solar imported from Spain. Again, the one which is from Spain has a very low emission grade, but here the multicrystalline solar is much higher, so it's about like double of that imported. Natural gas, we can assume that this is again an average emission of 428 gram of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour generation, and then lignite fire is the worst with 1153 gram carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. And here we see that it's accounted to 20% of the entire total energy generated and used in Germany. And we also see that black coal reaches nearly 10%, so together like 30%, whereas the nuclear power went down a little bit, then went up again a little bit, so it's about 12 to 13%. Now, obviously, if this disappears this year, so the generation of electricity from 2023 must be spread among the other sources. That is, yes, renewable will increase step by step, but we don't see a high jump anymore. But what we see here is that the black coal and lignite, and here we don't see it, but we see that in this year, these three conventional electricity sources, electricity generation sources, become more important in the energy source mix than ever before, perhaps. And that is not good. That is not good, because lignite is the most climate damaging of all of energy sources. Then again, the black coals as well. The old generation power plants emit like 1,188 gram carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour generation, and the new ones like 950 carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. So mostly, I mean, this is one thing, but we also see another problem with lignite-fired power plants, and that is like combined heat and power. So CHP is hardly available and hardly used because the heat users are far from mines. And another issue is that the raw lignite consists about 55% of water, so 55% of the raw lignite consists is accounted to water, and that's why it is not that easy to transport. And the use of lignite is usually at spot, so right at the mines. So why would it be correct to switch off nuclear power plants? Well, I believe it's not, but let's see some ideas of why I think so. Shortage of natural gas and oil in Europe is there. People cannot even settle their bills because of the price skyrocketing. Then again, governments have to use tax monies to subsidize the electricity bills. Despite the danger of shortage, German natural gas power plants used up more sources between May and July than ever before. Just to see a different a clear picture. So in July only, 13.8% more natural gas was used on the year-on-year basis, or year-on-year base. And if we consider that the Germany has to fill up all the reserves and should not use these gas, then this is a problematic issue. The reason why actually Germany suddenly used more gas for electricity generation is that it's also said that maintenance works at French nuclear power plants could be one of, or could be the major reason. Now, the Federal Association of German Industry, BDI, calls for more electricity from lignite and coal-fired power plants. Well, as we know, the two most polluting sources, and the reason why they say so, why the Federal Association calls for them, is because they believe that nuclear power plants will be then phased out and will cease operations. Now, 2022, the phasing out should be actually reconsidered. And why again? One of the reasons is that the European Union sees natural gas and nuclear energy as sustainable sources of energy. Then the reasoning against nuclear energy starts always with the danger caused by a potential meltdown, and not how the new generations are developed. So next generation nuclear power plants are in the phase of development. We can see them like natrium reactor and traveling wave reactor. The first natrium reactor should generate start operation in the United States in 2028, and there are huge companies which are willing to support, even financially back these kind of projects. Among them we see the Korean SK, one of the great, the most important energy generators, and General Electric Hitachi consortium as well. So energy must be generated when needed, and therefore we see that there's no sufficient standardized storage technology at the market yet. Startups work on them to find real alternatives to lithium-ion batteries. So among them we can see flow batteries, gravity-based systems, and thermal storage as well, just to name the most important projects. All of the companies which produce these new technology storage systems claim that these systems are the cheapest. Now, in 2022, a working paper was published by the scientific services of the German government that shows the following. Unlike in case of the wind onshore, we see a cost of a total social cost of 8.8 cents per kilowatt hour, compared to nuclear source that should have a total shuttle cost at 37.8 cent per kilowatt per hour. But we see that this working paper value provides the current status that includes the oldest generation of nuclear power plants. And instead of this kind of aversion which is practiced by the German governments, the governments should once again reconsider what they want to do and how they should continue the generation of electric power. Once again, why the coast might fail. So nuclear power plants generation is one of the safest among the world, and is seen also the safest technology among the conventional sources. Generation 1 and 2 nuclear power plants from 1960s and 70s are the least efficient systems and the least safe systems, and now generation 3 and generation 4 reactors are currently in the development phase. Generation 3 are already developed, and instead of the complete aversion, the German government should reconsider the situation and continue the operation of nuclear power plants at this very low level. So it's not about high level. If we see the energy source mix as well. And we can see that the technology might be soon ready to use nuclear waste for electric power generation again. So let's close this presentation with a conclusion. We see that the German government should point to the safest aspects of the nuclear power generation in comparison to other conventional sources, so that the society also can see what are the advantages of nuclear power plants compared to lignite, etc. power plants. Then a so-called Energiewende should not be stopped, should be revised, and should be seen that it is or it might not be manageable to continue the electricity generation without promptly adjustable energy sources like nuclear power plants. The cost might be overestimated, the social cost. So I saw that the environmental effects are very low compared to other conventional sources. So CO2, so carbon dioxide emissions, are not as high as in the case of other conventional sources, and we cannot easily offset them. We need technologies, we need the development of technology to be able to not use the carbon offset credit system, but to sufficiently and efficiently reduce the emission by our productive operations or production operations. The recycling of used nuclear fuel is now possible in the United States. It has been started, so we could recycle and reuse some of the used nuclear fuel elements again. And also let's see how it works out with generation 3 and 4 power plants. We have seen that their safety levels, safety standards are extremely high compared to the old generation. So here it comes to the end, and I would be very pleased if you could tell me your own opinion, your own ideas about the topic. You see my mail address there as well, so please contact me. And I would like to say once again, I am very pleased, I'm very grateful for the chance to be able to make this presentation at this conference. Thank you very much.